I think it is possible to forgive, and I don't even know if forgive is how I feel. It's something that the whole world is watching to see the result of the peace treaty, and certainly our thoughts and prayers are with the people of Colombia. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I'm crying. It's been 15 years. I don't know why I'm crying so much. And even now, 15 years later, I can be taken back to that moment of pain. But I remember crying and thinking as if a part of me had died also. It is extremely difficult when your life is so entwined with someone else's to be able to get past that loss.
Disastrous terrorist attack on the World Trade Center.
Oh, there's another one. Another plane just hit. Right, oh my gosh, another plane has just hit another building. Flew right into the middle of it. Explosion.
Esta es la historia de Deena Burnett, la viuda de Tom Burnett, un trabajador y padre de familia norteamericano que viajaba en uno de los 4 aviones entre New Jersey y San Francisco, identificado como el vuelo 93, el cual fue desviado a propósito por sus secuestradores con el fin de impactar en algún lugar emblemático de Washington. A Tom y sus compañeros se les consideran héroes, porque se enfrentaron a los terroristas y ofrendaron sus vidas para evitar que la aeronave se estrellara en un escenario poblado de la capital estadounidense.
When I first heard that Tom had died, and it actually came from the television. I heard on the television that he had died. So there was no personal contact. I just remember dropping to my knees, and I felt sorrow in a way that I had never imagined it could feel. I clung to the memories that I had with Tom, and I was very grateful that I had spent as many years with him as I did. And I concentrated on that. I concentrated on the fact that we'd had a wonderful marriage and a wonderful friendship and many good years together.
No solo Deena sufrió la pérdida de Tom. Sus 3 hijas, a pesar de ser muy pequeñas para la época de la tragedia, tuvieron que crecer sin su padre.
You know, before September 11th, I feel as if I had a completely different life than I do now. All of my dreams and goals and hope for the future was wrapped around what Tom and I wanted together as a couple. And all of that changed on September 11th when he died. So after his death, I had to really think about what life was going to be like without him. And I had a choice of whether to continue to be angry and upset and sad, or to put my life back together and create my own goals and dreams and hope for the future.
Deena ha vuelto a casarse y vive en los suburbios de Little Rock. Para la fecha de los acontecimientos, las gemelas Hallie y Madison tenían 5 años y la menor, Anna Claire, 3. Sin proponérselo, Deena pasó de ser una ama de casa tranquila a convertirse en la viuda de un héroe en la tragedia del 11 de septiembre.
You know, shifting from being married and being able to depend on my husband to being a single mom and having all of the responsibility of the family and the raising of the children fall on me was difficult, as you can imagine. However, he and I had talked about what would happen if anything ever happened to him. We also talked about what he should do if anything ever happened to me. And so in the back of my mind, I always had a plan in place in the event I needed it. And that was that I would depend on my family. My family was 2,000 miles away. I moved back to be near them so they could help me with the children. And I set up a home for the 4 of us and went to work. I think that once September 11th happened, and anytime you suffer a loss like that, that's very tragic, very instant, I think that you start looking back on your life and reevaluating and coming to a better understanding of all the events that led up to that one tragedy and that one loss. And in doing so, I was able to understand that everything we had experienced as children, as adults, and as a married couple had led to the events of September 11th and his actions on that airplane. And I really came to believe that it was part of God's plan for both of us. He was not supposed to be on that flight. He changed flights at the last moment and ended up on Flight 93. Had he not been there, I do believe that circumstances would have been very different for that plane. I do believe that his contribution was significant, and that it really gave hope and light to the world on a very dark day. I also believe that the experiences I had as a child, the loss, just the different events that I had experienced really helped me to be able to cope with losing Tom and to be able to hold on to my faith and to be able to step into a position to be able to lead rather than one in which I just closed the doors and left the world out. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I'm crying. It's been 15 years. I don't know why I'm crying so much. Sorry. Just give me a minute. You know, it still hurts. 15 years later, it still hurts.
on September 11th, I was down the street behind you about 6 blocks, and I remember we went outside after the first plane hit, and my 3-year-old daughter thought it was fireworks. She was sitting on my shoulders and she started clapping. And then when the second plane hit, we were standing down on Water Street watching, because you could see the towers through all the smaller buildings. Then the second plane hit and she thought it was more fireworks, and she started screaming and clapping. And then these 2 police officers standing next to us started crying. It was very strange. So then the whole day just kind of devolved further, and people were running down our street all covered with ashes, and we were giving out water and masks. And about 2 days later, we finally left when the power went off and the water stopped to our building. We were just going to stick it out. It was quite a horrible time here.
I remember I was at work and I received a phone call from my sister who was home. She said, "Get to the closest TV, something is happening." I just remember looking in amazement at the level of destruction. So I think at that point in time, what do you think? You don't really know what to think. You just know that a horrible event has happened, and you don't really know what to make of it.
I was at my house with a couple of my housemates. I work from home, so I was just getting up. And the phone rang, and it was someone calling me to tell me to turn on the television. They were evacuating parts of downtown D.C. A friend of mine was walking up Connecticut Avenue right near here, and she called me and wondered where I was evacuating to. And I told her we were watching television, why don't you come over? We got to like 11 in the morning, everything had quieted down, noon, 12:30. So we went out to lunch, and the place was empty. And a half an hour later, it was completely packed. Everybody had the same idea. It was this collective, we have to get some distance from this. Everybody needed a drink.
I think that September 11th certainly made us more aware of our surroundings, more aware of how we traveled and how we viewed the world outside of our own country. I think that we also became much more dedicated to serving those who needed help. I think that we became much more aware of what one person can do to make an impact. And I think that there were a lot of good things that really did come out of September 11th, despite the loss that we all suffered. I think it is possible to forgive, and I don't even know if forgive is how I feel. I harbor no anger, and I think that unless you do have anger, then there's nothing to forgive. I believe that this was all part of a plan, and something good came out of it. We lost my husband and my children's father, which was horrible, but the world was able to see that heroes live every day, and that it doesn't really matter who you are or what you do or what your responsibilities are. You can be a hero in your everyday life just by serving God, by having faith, and by helping others.
I wouldn't give them the opportunity to do it again, but I believe in forgiveness. I would have said that the next day.
I strongly believe in forgiving others, so I'm very spiritual, so I do believe in forgiving others, but you can't forget because it defines your history.
Well, I don't really forgive people who do things like that. Someone who is involved in an attack like that isn't likely to change, right? So no, I'm not really going to forgive. You just learn the lessons and move on.
Hoy, en las ciudades que fueron blanco de los atentados, se ve transformado el paisaje arquitectónico de sus calles y avenidas, donde se guarda la memoria de las víctimas. El pueblo norteamericano, aunque tiene en perspectiva otras preocupaciones, aprende a vivir con el recuerdo de lo ocurrido 15 años atrás.
I studied history. I know how fragile civilization is. It was a tragedy, and a horrible tragedy, in terms of human life, in terms of what it did to American culture. The fear that took over American culture led to some really horrible things, including the invasion of Iraq. But me personally, no, I knew things like this could happen. It was just shocking to watch it happen.
You know, I learned very early on that it's better to be thankful and grateful for what you have and for the time that you have spent with your loved ones than it is to be bitter and angry for what you have lost. You know, I think it's something that the whole world is watching to see the result of the peace treaty, and certainly our thoughts and prayers are with the people of Colombia and, you know, the hope for a peaceful future. I think that we're all watching. I think that the agreement could be both good for both sides and certainly for the future of your country.
Deena Burnett siempre se ha definido a sí misma como una persona normal. No obstante, es reconocida en su comunidad por su gran fuerza interior, llena de coraje, fiel a sus convicciones y con una profunda fe en Dios. Virtudes que plasmó en Fighting Back, las memorias que publicó en 2006.
I do a lot of charity work. I really felt after Tom had died and the contribution he made on Flight 93 that he had made a big difference. And it made me understand that one person really can make a difference. You don't have to have a collective group. So I began thinking about things that I could do in my own community. I started volunteering at the church. I started volunteering at the school. And from there, it ballooned to something bigger. I ended up starting a volunteer program for young girls who are 16 years old and help them to work with cancer patients so that they could understand that even as a child, they can give back to their own communities. They are called the Angels of Hope, and they spend an entire year working with cancer patients at hospitals, at the 20th Century Club Lodge, and in different organizations around our state. I also have started volunteering for the American Red Cross. I sit on the board here in Arkansas, and we respond to a lot of different tragedies and weather-related events, just helping families both here in our communities and on a national scale too. You know, I think that my strength certainly comes from prayer, from being able to go to church, have a conversation with God, and know that He is always with me. I also believe that in writing my book from the very beginning, right after Tom died, it helped tremendously to be able to put my thoughts on paper and to be able to talk about them to friends and family and the gentleman who helped me write the book. Sometimes it's difficult to see things clearly unless you hear yourself say them or you put them on paper. I think my daughters have been helped by my being able to be strong for them and by keeping close to our faith. I always took them to church anytime they had difficulty with memories, with anger, with any problem that arose in their life. We always prayed about it, and we talked about it from the standpoint that God is the center of our home. And I think that that is what has helped them most of all, because I've seen how they react with other children. When they were very little, they used to take the hands of other children and say, "Don't worry, God will take care of it." And even now that they are adults, they swap Bible scriptures every day. They'll call me and say, "Mom, I have this going on in my life, and I hope that you'll pray for me today." It's a mother's blessing, and it all revolves around faith. My faith in God has never wavered. I know that it is my faith, my family, and the love for my children that helped me put my life back together, helped me become who I am. Instead of angry and bitter, I became someone who is valuable and able to help others. And that was a choice I made in holding on to my faith rather than letting it go.